Today, we are putting AI on the witness stand. We're going to ask the tough questions to figure out how we can make these incredible new systems reliable, accurate, and, well, trustworthy. So let's get started.
Look, we all know artificial intelligence is set to change everything, from how we manage our money to how we diagnose diseases. But here's the big problem. As these AIs start making decisions on their own, how do we actually know we can trust them? This isn't just a techie question. It's the single biggest hurdle stopping businesses from going all in.
And right at the heart of this trust issue is something called AI hallucination. The best way to think about it is this. Imagine you ask a genius a question, and instead of saying, I don't know, they just invent an answer that sounds totally believable. That's a hallucination. And you can see why this is a huge deal for companies, right? An AI agent that lies with confidence is actually worse than having no agent at all.
So, to figure this all out, we're going to hold a little trial in our AI Courthouse. First, we'll open the case and peek inside the AI black box. Then we'll put our first witness on the stand, the LLM-Judge. After that, we'll cross-examine the judge to see how good it really is, before we call up a smarter, more cautious witness. We'll even look for some ironclad mathematical proof. And finally, we'll deliver our verdict on what it takes to build a system you can actually trust.
All right, so our case begins with the central mystery of AI. We have these amazing tools that can do incredible things, but when we ask how they do them, we often get nothing. Their decision-making process is basically a black box. And that's the whole black box problem right there. An AI might give you a brilliant stock pick or a medical insight, but it can't show you its work. And in fields where every single step of the reasoning is critical, think finance or healthcare, that lack of transparency is a complete non-starter. And listen, this isn't just a theory. A McKinsey survey for 2025 found that even though 62% of organizations are already playing around with AI agents, the number one risk they're worried about is inaccuracy. They see the promise, but they just can't afford to be wrong.
So, if getting the answer wrong is the top concern, what's the solution? Well, the most popular idea right now is to fight fire with fire. So let's call our first major witness to the stand, the LLM-Judge. The idea here is actually pretty simple. You take a really powerful AI, like a GPT-4, and you use it as a judge to check the work of another AI. It's basically like having a super smart automated fact checker that scores answers on things like accuracy, relevance, and whether it's making stuff up. And this really gets to the heart of why this is such a game changer. For a long time, having humans check AI outputs was the gold standard because, we get nuance. But it's also super slow, incredibly expensive, and get this, we're not even that consistent with each other. The LLM-Judge, though, it's lightning fast, cheap to scale, and you can make it perfectly consistent every single time. Okay, but we can't just take this AI judge's word for it, right? Any good trial needs a cross-examination. So the real question is, just how good is this judge? Well, the results are pretty mind-blowing. Studies show that the best AI judges, like GPT-4, agree with human evaluators about 85% of the time. Now listen to this. That's actually better than the agreement rate between two human experts, which is only about 81%. It's kind of wild. In some ways, the AI is a more consistent judge than we are. But we don't just pull that 85% number out of thin air. There's a whole statistical toolkit to make sure this judge is legit. Correlation tells us if the AI and human scores are generally trending together. Then there's something called Cohen's Kappa, which is a fancy way of making sure the agreement is real and not just random luck. And then, just like with a medical test, we measure its sensitivity, how good it is at finding the correct answers, and its specificity, how good it is at flagging the incorrect ones. Now, judging the final answer is a great step. But what if we could build a better witness from the get-go? This next idea is all about creating AI that is, by its very nature, more cautious and more aware of its own limits. And this quote from Chi-Han Yu, the CEO of Apier, just nails it. The new goal isn't just to make AI smarter in a raw horsepower kind of way. It's about making its decisions more reliable and predictable, especially when things really matter. So, how does that work? Well, instead of just blurting out an answer, a risk-aware AI goes through these 3 steps. First, it comes up with a possible answer. Then, and this is a big one, it actually estimates how confident it is in that answer. And finally, it weighs the pros and cons. It asks, what's the penalty for being wrong here versus the reward for being right? And sometimes, in a high-stakes situation, the smartest possible move is to just say, you know what, I don't know.
So, we've talked about statistical checks and smarter strategies, but for the really, really critical stuff, I'm talking about things like aerospace engineering or self driving cars, we need more than just confidence. We need proof. And that brings us to the highest level of evidence in our courthouse: formal verification. Formal verification is the absolute gold standard. Instead of just testing a bunch of an AI's answers to see if they're right, this method uses pure math to prove that the system's logic is fundamentally correct from the ground up. It's the difference between being probably right and having a mathematical guarantee that you can't be wrong.
Okay, now I know this looks complicated, but just follow the flow with me for a second. Think of it like a factory assembly line for truth. Over on the left, one AI called the solver comes up with an answer. Then that answer gets passed down the line to other AI agents, the formalizer and the prover, who act like inspectors. Their job is to translate every single step into pure logic and try to poke holes in it. See all those red false arrows? If any single step fails inspection, the whole thing gets rejected. It's an incredibly tough system of checks and balances to make sure the final output is perfect. And this table shows you why all that effort is worth it. That little delta symbol just means how good the AI is at its job. Look at the high-performance AI. It only needs about 5 tries to find a solution that passes that whole inspection line. But the less capable AI, it needs more than 13 tries. So this tells us something really important. A smarter AI isn't just more accurate. It's way, way more efficient at finding a provably correct answer.
So, after all the testimony, all the cross-examination, and all the evidence, what's the final verdict? How do we actually build an AI system that we can truly deeply trust? Well, the verdict is clear. There's no single silver bullet. Building trust in AI requires a whole justice system. You need the LLM-Judge for fast, scalable checks. You need the smart witness that knows when it's out of its depth. For the most critical jobs, you need the absolute guarantee of mathematical proof. And overseeing it all, you need us. Human oversight is still the final word. We're the ones who set the rules, check the system, and handle all the messy, complicated edge cases that only a person can. So we have a pretty clear path forward for building reliable AI. But it leaves us with one last, massive question. As AI takes on all these roles, the judge, the witness, even the evidence itself, we're left to wonder, who gets to write the laws that govern it all? And that's a question that's much bigger than just code. It's a conversation we all need to be a part of.